All right, so this is tour 3. So we've already gone over my final playthrough series thus far. We have hit the initial early game factories, how we got to the city, and then we went over the planning and the logistics of how I went through kind of the process of laying out the city layout and the planning of the factories themselves, as well as, like I said, the logistics, and we talked about the train hub. Now we're going to talk about the central storage, and we're also going to fit in the Ficsmas factory. But we're going to talk about the central storage first, because again, that is where all the items come in. And then if you just happen to catch this one, like I said, there are 2 tour videos in a series before this one, and then there is going to be several after this one, and you can find the playlist, or you might be watching live, or you're watching the VOD, because it's all going to be in one live stream. 1,300 hours. All of these items in the city are flowing through the central storage here. And this is actually the first building that I built in the city. And there were quite a few things with it that I wasn't happy with. One of the problems that I had when I was designing this building is that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just kind of looked at pictures on the internet and picked something. I kind of had a little bit of analysis paralysis on this thing. I did kind of use, you see the stripe pattern, how it spirals, the teal and the purple? That's a little bit of the, what's that building in London? The egg-shaped building. And it has that diagonal kind of stripe. I kind of use that a little bit. Obviously it's a cylinder, not like egg shaped and stuff. And then obviously we've got our teal and our purple. What I ended up doing with most of the rest of the buildings is I kept one building, one color per building. This one, I kind of combine the colors, and I think it makes it look a little bit messier. Whereas I think these are a lot cleaner because they've got one color for each of them. But it's the one in the center, and it's fine. But yeah, that's one thing that I wasn't very happy with. The other problem that I had is I wanted to make sure that the central building was the tallest one in the city, at least until Arasaka came to town. But it was. And so I needed to make it a certain height, even though central storage doesn't really need to be that tall. Now I did fill it with a invention of mine that I think is pretty unique. I think it's pretty cool. And we're gonna, that invention is a workaround to the limiting factor of 240 items per minute on your upload on a Dimensional Depot. I call it an item booster, Dimensional Depot booster. So we're going to go over that and kind of in detail so that you guys can see that. So we're going to go over that. Look, in this case, we're going to start at the bottom, and then we're going to go to the top. Actually, we're at the top. Let's just start at the top. All right, let's start at the top. As you can see, the space elevator is at the top. And then just inside the top, phase 5 gives you the ability to make these portals. And I've got my portal hub here at the top. I've also got a man cannons, hypertubes, used for very quick launching up this very tall tower. This was before the invention of elevators in 1.1, but I still find elevators to be quite slow. I like using these most of the time. The next layer down here is we have the actual central storage. I have built a round building, and then I set these interiors radially. Okay, this is just a blueprint, got lights underneath. Okay, I set it with a beam holding it up, or not a beam, but what is this? A painted beam. It is a beam. A beam holding it up. And then I went under and I deleted all the beams. All right, because each of these is radial. This is a circular building. It's a cylindrical building, and so it's based off of this radial design. And some of the floors I adjust to be squared, and we'll see some of that. But in this floor particularly, I leaned into the radial design here. And then I pre-built all of these. I didn't end up using them all, but I did use most of them. A lot of Ficsmas factory stuff here. And again, we're going to be going over the Ficsmas factory items in this tour. Actually, we're going to combine the central storage and Ficsmas. But let me show you where these are going. So these are going into their own. Everybody gets a dedicated dimensional depot, except for Ficsmas. Okay, everybody gets one. Now this is what is the limiter. All right, if you look at this, 240 per minute. Okay, so let's take that silica and let's pull this out. It's uploading. But like, that's slow. I got a Mark 5 belt. I have Mark 6 belts. I have a belt that can move shit at 1200 per minute. But I have to eat this at 240 per minute. And by the way, I have big blueprints, and I cannot lie. And a lot of the blueprints that I use are bigger than, are so big that they empty my dimensional depots, right? Some of these are pretty small. I mean, look how slow this is. Right, look at nuclear pasta, 250. You don't build with nuclear pasta, I'm just saying. But some of these other ones, modular frames, 250. Heavy modular frames, 250. What if I build a bunch of concrete? You know how long it takes to fill up 2,500 concrete at 240 per minute? More than 10 minutes. Okay, so we're gonna talk about my solution for that, but we'll do that. That's actually just underneath this floor. But before I do that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go down to the bottom, and I'm gonna show you the intake into the city, or into the building, and then it coming up. All right, so we're gonna take this down. So what I've got here is a series of truck drop-offs, okay? And by the way, this is also where these trucks get refueled. Okay, so any truck that is coming from a factory, it's loaded with a mixture of all of the outputs that go with that factory. Let's look inside this truck. Oh, well, he's doing something special. Let's see what this guy has for us. He's dropping off the fuel as well. All those trucks just dropped off. Of course they did. Of course they did. Well, take my word for it. The trucks come in and they are loaded with whatever outputs their factory is making. And if we take an example here, the Shard has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 outputs. 7 items that need to be loaded into the central storage. Okay, so the items need to come in and they get dropped off. Here we go. Here's a mixture. They get dropped off and then they go up and they get sorted. I already showed you how they get stored. Once that storage overflows, they get sunk. Okay, now that happens in the floors immediately above. Now, this is a really complex one. This is the phase 5. This is a really good example. I just built this a few weeks ago. And how this works is you have all the items coming in, and then they get spliced off. But once they fill, and you can see all of these are filled, the truck comes in and it dumps them all together in this line. Okay, that comes in right here. Okay, these are the two truck outputs. I've got a buffer storage here, and then they get fed in, and then if it's nuclear pasta, it gets dumped to the left. But oh no, it's full. Okay, that means my storage for nuclear pasta is full. And so it gets bumped all the way through, all the way around, and then up. I don't need these anymore. I was using these for dump boxes. And then up into a sink. So the first priority is to fill the storages. And then once the storage is full and it backs up, it can get sunk. And you can see all of these are getting sunk. If we get a truckload, we can see that we'll be able to see them all get sunk, except for this one. What's this, bro? Oh, superposition oscillators. Yeah, everybody with superposition oscillators apparently win this one too. Singularity says. All right, so that's how they get sorted. And then we go around the corner here and in to the forever lifts. Now I want to tell you, show you guys something. All right. There's an old trick and you need to know it. And I've used it extensively in this tower. Lifts have limits. This lift, look at the trigons and time crystals. 48. Let's switch to a belt that is a little bit more less endgame. 48 of anything, by the way. So 48 all-clad aluminum sheets for a Mark V. But if I go to delete this one, look how tall that is. And look how many all-clad aluminum sheets it took to build it. Almost 10 times the amount. That is 10 times higher than the limit. So how did I do it? Well, if you have the exact position of where you're gonna go into a lift floor hole, it will snap. And it doesn't matter how long it is. Infinitely long. But it has to be precisely. Now, by the way, you could go either direction in this case, but you actually don't need a floor hole down here. You can just do this. The floor hole needs to be at the destination snapping point. So that's how I got these tall ass lifts. So that is the mechanism. They come in the train station or the truck station. They get sorted, overflowed to the sink if they fill up. Now, I mentioned there's a few things that I don't like about this factory or this building, and this is one of them. There's a big empty space in here. I was going to fill this with things like Nobelisk production and ammo and things like that, but frankly, I just never got around to it. And so there's a big empty chunk here. And like I said, it's part of that is because I needed to make it taller than I needed because I wanted to make sure that the central building was taller than all the rest. Now, this floor, I do have some drone towers. And so what I did is I did an open design in the middle here, and it kind of breaks up the sheer like column nature of this, which I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, these drone ports I use for a couple of things. Mostly I use them for transferring fuel throughout the map. Okay, I don't have any more of those right now, but when I had like little places that needed fuel, I would send a like, is this full of fuel? It's got its own fuel. One of these over here I actually use for sending fuel out. And by the way, the gas station, which we can see over here. I probably should have gone over the gas station in the tour on logistics, but that is delivering fuel for the gas station, and it's delivering it through this. But it doesn't use very much, so it doesn't do very many deliveries. But yeah, that's what I use this for. I also bring in the Ficsmas factory. There's no truck stations on the Ficsmas factory, and we'll go over that soon. The output when it was running, I droned it. That's the leftover drones, and they land over here somewhere. There we go, Ficsmas receiving. All right, so you know, a drone option to go with the truck option. I didn't end up using it quite as much as I thought I would. The next floor up here I used for firing myself around the map. This is basically the man cannon floor, but there's a problem. I started building buildings in the way of where the man cannons fire. So the bad one is this one. This is the one I use the most. I use this one to fire myself over to the train hub. The problem is right outside the door here. See, look, it goes down and then pops me out. Right outside the door here is a giant Arasaka tower. So this is now not really usable. By the way, these are my light. Oh, I just put this one by hand. I ended up making blueprints for these light systems. 2 meters foundations, and you can mount lights flush to get better lighting than the lighting that's in the game. Okay, so without further ado, it's time to talk about my item booster. The game provides you with far more Mercer spheres than you need for 1 Mercer sphere per item. Far more. So many so that I'm using 20 for this project and 1 Mercer sphere for all the items in addition. Every item gets 1, plus these 20. Plus I have 23 in my inventory. And I actually didn't even go out and get them all. These are just ones I happened to find. And I've left a bunch of dimensional depots all over the map because I've never really had a shortage. So there's a bunch, like there was a couple at the old base, right? So you have a lot of Mercer spheres. But my question was, how do we leverage that in a dynamic way? Now, there's a couple of items that you're probably pretty safe loading up a couple extra dimensional depots. Your concrete, right? You use a lot of concrete, you use it fast. right? It takes 10 minutes. If you're only using one, it takes 10 minutes, 240 per minute, just 2,400, right? It takes 10 minutes to fill this up if you're only using one. Concrete is an easy win. I use a lot of plastic too, because why? I build a lot of coated concrete foundations. All right, iron plate gets used a lot. Copper sheets get used a lot, okay? Sometimes iron rods, depending on what you're making, all right? So wire, okay? You could put 2 or 3 extra on a handful of these high use items and call it good. Most people would probably do that. I'm not most people. So let me take you back. Let me take you back to the fall of 2023. Satisfactory is in update 8. This is before 1.0. This is before dimensional depots. But we still had the same problem that we have now. And that is that we are out building something and we run out of materials. How do you get those materials from your central storage to your inventory? Now, dimensional depots fixed this problem in 1.0. But before we had dimensional depots, I came up with a solution, and it was my first tutorial and my first kind of unique thing that I've brought to this game. And in many ways, actually, it may be my only unique thing that I have brought to this game. As far as I'm aware, nobody independently came up with what I'm about to show you on their own that I know of. And I'm pretty confident that I'm the first person to come up with this. What I figured out how to do was how to turn a belt on and off remotely. Okay? And basically, what I do is I block a belt, and then using a priority power switch, I switch this switch, and this can happen anywhere. Okay? This is not connected to anything. If I was in the Dune Desert, I could build a priority power switch and I could turn any of these off. Watch, I'm gonna turn off the Gold Coast. Okay, all these Gold Coast factories. Okay, the Red Forest aluminum, all these that I turned on earlier today, I just turned them all off. I can turn them off anywhere. So what I did is I combined the priority power switch with a couple of little tricks so that I could block a belt and then unblock it remotely. So what that let me do is I set up trains or drones to basically take whatever was unblocked to my location. So if I needed concrete, I unblocked the concrete and concrete flowed. And then I ran, and then I didn't need concrete anymore. And so I turned it off and I turned on plastic, or I turned on quartz crystal, or I turned on 2 or 3 or 4, and I could control what was being sent to me on location. And it was great. And it was a very, very popular video of mine, and it got like 150,000 views. It's one of my most watched edited videos. It's actually one of my most watched videos ever, maybe my most watched. And it was awesome. And then dimensional depots came out. And so I asked myself, how can I use this trick now that we have dimensional depots, and combine that with the earlier problem that we can only upload 240 per minute? I built this. So what is this? This is massive storage for 20 items. The 20 items that I feel were most likely to be needed on a mass scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 actually. Quartz crystal, stacks and stacks and stacks, ready. But as you can see, quartz crystal enters but it doesn't continue. And that is because I have empty canisters blocking it. You can see that my setup allows for only undefined to go through the center. Empty canisters cannot go through the center because it's defined going left. So if this fills up with empty canisters, and it is, then this belt gets blocked. Well, what's a good way of unblocking these empty canisters? Using them to package water. And I've got a closed system here. So I package the water, bring up the packaged water, and then I unpackage the water, store it in the fluid buffer, and it's down ready to be packaged again. And all I have to do is turn on the machine. Well, I just showed you how I can turn on a machine remotely. So let's go ahead and turn on quartz crystal. And it's on. Why is it on? Well, because we're packaging water and we're using the empty canisters. Now I'll show you where this is going in a second, but I want you to understand this mechanism. And then I go and I turn it off and it stops. I have 20 of these. So where does it go when it goes down? Well, I'll show you. It goes down in here, and this takes one belt and splits it into 20. This is a 1 to 20 splitter. And then I merge, and by the way, there's 20 items. I split them in 20 ways. And then I merge them. And then I send them up. Each of the 20, they're stacked 20. I send them up and dump them into 20 dimensional depots. So what does this allow me to do? This allows me to upload as many as 20 dimensional depots per item, as long as this belt is fast enough. Now, this caps out at 780, right? So if I replace this with a Mark V, I could actually upload 1,200 items per minute. The problem is that these actually get clogged when I turn them off. So let's go ahead and actually full clear this. So I'm gonna turn off, so you can see how it works, the iron plates. And now when I use the iron plates that are in the 20 dimensional depots, it's going to unblock this stuff. And it looks like there's a bunch of plastic in here too. Iron plates are moving. Plastic, concrete, steel beams encased. What's in here? Something's blocking this. Let's find out. Something's left over blocking it. Iron plates, iron plates. Oh my gosh, look at this poor guy. A singularity cell. How did he get here? I actually know how he got there. There was a mistake made. These have actually been blocked for a while. I haven't checked these. I accidentally plugged singularity cells into the iron plate hole, and these made it to the end. All right. Well, it's fixed now. So yeah, now iron plates, quartz crystal. You can see it's gonna start dumping these. There's some silica in there still. See how much faster these are moving than just 240 per minute? All of these are uploading the various items. and it allows me to basically boost my dimensional depots at will. Now the downside is the clogging. I did make a declogger, but I hate using it because it burns it. But if I really had to, I've got a clog clear, and I turn it on, and it gets most of the excess pulled out. There's still gonna be a little bit left over in the dimensional depots themselves, and like a little bit in like the belt there. But the clog clear turns these on, and it kind of overflow dumps everything. And when I turn off the clog clear, there you go. So this is pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of this. Like I said, it's got some unique problems, but I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, frankly. And I was able to use my remote switch in another application, and that way it made me feel it continued to feel special, which, as we know, that is what this is all about, my ego. So this is the entirety of the central storage. Pretty happy with this. Next, let's go check out part 2 of this tour, and we're gonna quickly chat about the Ficsmas factory. So go back, Christmas 2024. Coffee Stain Studios put out a contest for basically Santa's workshop. And they gave out, I want to say, I don't even know what place I ended up getting. Was it 4th or 8th or something like that? I can tell you, I got the highest placement of any solo builder. Everybody who placed higher than me was a team build. Yes, Suspicious Snowman coming up. So I went all out on design on this, and I'll walk you through it. And yes, because we're in a city, of course, I picked Nakatomi Plaza because Die Hard's a Christmas movie. So I'm actually, I spent a lot of time kind of playing with designs and stuff, just pure design work, right? I'm pretty happy with a couple of things that came out of this. These are actually pipes. Candy canes. These are layered circular ramps that came out kind of looking like doilies. And then this clean intersection I'm pretty happy with. This is a 1 meter foundation above, and then these are just layered ramps, and they kind of hide the intersection of all of this. These are actually, if you're unfamiliar with how Ficsmas works, this is actually the generation of the item. The trees give, it's like a mine. They give presents, and you take the presents and you turn them into other items. And so this isn't just a design, this is the source of presents for the factory. Now, it also needs copper and ore, which I do have a train input for that in the subway, but most of it comes from these presents. And yes, Mikey, the Suspicious Snowman. Yes, we do have here, these snowmen have been at it for 18 months since Christmas 2024. And we're not sure exactly what they're doing, but it's been going on for a while, and they're summoning something. Krampus, Jack Frost. Either way, something's happening here, and I just leave them to their own devices. These curves here are actually golden ratio. Fibonacci spirals. These are Fibonacci spirals, actually, which was actually pretty difficult to do. But they are, and they look really cool. And then we have our snowman pathway here. I think this turned out pretty well. We have ugly sweater interior. I also built Christmas trees. This is shockingly difficult to do. A closed loop. Spiral candy cane. Pretty happy with that. Up here, the lighting. We have a snowflake, but all of the snow is turned off, it looks like. Behind these foundations, these are all snow machines, snow dispensers, but it looks like those are turned off too. At least the snow blowers are still on. Thank God for the snowmen, right? But yeah, the lighting here is a giant snowflake, which is pretty cool. This stuff is really the majority of the decorations, the exterior and then the lobby here. Yeah, I did make a diagram here. Each floor has one of these so that you can, quickly see what's getting made. This is just the iron ingots section. This is actually the first Ficsmas section. Presents to blue bulbs. And frankly, the floors just pretty much repeat a lot of the same stuff here. Okay, red bulbs. And by the way, I do every other floor red and white. I tried to make it so it looked like a candy cane from the outside. It kind of works. Silver bulbs, gold bulbs, silver bulbs, and then all three bulbs. It's Ficsmas time in the city. What are those, branches? It's actually not Ficsmas time. These little blueprints kind of got a little complex. I forgot how well these turned out. And then all the belts are various Ficsmas designs, skins, stars. And then this is the final floor that kind of does all the little final things. Bows, snow, rockets. I have a bunch of rockets. I mean, they've been in my inventory for almost 2 years. So let's go up to the roof. Let's launch one off. How do you do this? You do it with a Nobelisk guy, sparkly fireworks. And then you just throw that shit on the ground. How do you fire? Like that. Good times. So that wraps up our third tour in this series of tours from the beginning of my playthrough to the end. We have done the starter factories, we have done planning and logistics, and we just did central storage and the Ficsmas factory. So we are doing one VOD working through everything. And I'm gonna cut each of these videos into, each of these sections into their own video. And this is the end of number 3. Next is actually all 4 of these. Yes, the shard included. So appreciate you watching. If you're watching this, whether you're live, in a VOD, or on the video, And next is these 4 towers.